Hello, Mario.
Are you there?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, I'm gonna check real quick, make sure we're both on the visual. I don't see that we are, but maybe I have to press play. Let me press play and see. Maybe, do you have, does Mel have another computer to check if we're on live and she can see us?
Yeah, I'll check it on my phone. Yeah, she's now going to check.
Okay.
I can.
Yeah, yeah,
We're live.
yeah.
We're live.
And we're seen? We're seen and heard?
Can you see us and hear us, darling?
Can't see you. Okay,
Yeah,
maybe
there's a
I,
lag. Yeah, there's a lag of about a minute or two, but it looks like we're live.
okay. And we're seen, right? She said we can.
You can see us, can you? Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Mario.
Uh,
He's not anymore. Hi, Mario. How are you?
Hey, Gary, I'm doing well. Great to have you on my channel. Great to see your new channel going and stuff.
Thank you very much. It's I was kind of pushed into it by Source last year. I had this thing in my back of my head going wah, 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 wah. And so I set it all up. And as once I set it up, I was like, right, now what do I do? And it was just like nothing, nothing. Wait. I was like, really? And then
Wait, are you there?
and yeah, I
And
am.
then okay, I'm gonna check. Oh, hold on, that's an echo. Sure we're both hold on the visual. I don't see that we are, but maybe. Okay, that's because I was playing. That's the
Yeah,
issue. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So,
So I then met Richard, Richard Cardinal, the tarot reader, and got chatting with him, and he very graciously said, "Oh, come on my channel," and I thought, well, this is it. And another friend of mine, loved by Tarot, Jenny by Tarot, loved by Jenny Tarot, she said to me, "Go for it, Gary. It's your time." So that's it. So I launched myself.
okay, nice, nice. And do you by chance see are you also, do you have also a visual screen of my YouTube channel? Because Jamie just jumped in there. He's a buddy of mine. And do you see that?
No, I don't.
Okay.
All I see is you and me together, basically.
Okay. Do you have a phone or another computer where you could put it on silent and
Yes.
see the video?
Yeah, I
Okay.
do.
Okay, there's Mel. Mel's here. She says she sees it with hey Mel. So that's awesome. Okay. It's so
Yeah.
strange. Okay. Okay, so we're good. So then we have two people. One's at one's at your place and one's in New Zealand. So
Superb.
maybe everybody will jump in eventually. You want to just keep talking and let everyone jump in? It'll be recorded anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it'll take a few people to get going, I think, and then we'll be well away. I mean, everyone. I see this on lives all the time where they're going, "We'll chat about something," and you know, um, Mel saying she can only see whoever's talking at one time. We haven't got a joint screen all the time, but that's it's okay if you're happy with that. I don't know.
Wait, what's going on?
Whoever talks has the full screen, and when it's off, it's not. Is that how you like it set up?
Oh, that's strange, but I don't know how to change it otherwise.
Don't worry about it. I'm happy with that.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I get it.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
like in usual Zooms. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't I don't remember offhand how to change that, but
I think it's view, isn't it? But
yeah, let me go to view real quick. Yeah. I could change it then. So it's on multi-speaker, so we want to change it to gallery?
yes.
Okay. Okay.
And then
Okay.
because everyone wants to see your beautiful face.
I don't say that. I'd rather be in the dark.
I know, but it's great to push you out your comfort zone.
Like that. I always, I always do it and I've been doing it in my talks with Dorje on the Marduk's Musing. And I usually no, I haven't done it in any of the lives, so I'm just putting it on so I could see if the video comes up. Oh man, I gotta turn up the sound. Okay.
Yeah, it's working better. Yeah, Mel's
Okay,
happy now.
cool.
We've got comments. It's better. So
Okay, so hopefully other people will jump in. I didn't put a link on my Discord. I was just hoping everyone would look on my channel. So, anyways, let's do it. Let's do it
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, I mean it's
So,
going to be recorded and for posterity, so it'll be fine.
yeah, yeah. Posterity will forgive us for any inconveniences. So let's get talking. So just to give a background, so Gary's been we've been chatting for over a year. How long? Maybe a year and a half?
Yeah,
Or
year and a half maybe now. Yeah.
oh, 2 years. And the Discord was initially for human design. And we're talking human design stuff, but we're all into many things. So how can we not talk other things, And of course, human design interacts with everything, and there's so many levels of human design. There's so much that had to be questioned about it too, because it resembles other systems, indirectly, and then attempts to resemble modern science, the scientific paradigm. So, there's all kinds of interesting interactive contentions and problematics with that. So, so let's get into
What
uh
Mario's saying in layman's speak, everybody, is that he has been gracious enough to spend a lot of his time teaching us, a group of us, human design. And well, there's a real amazing group that we've got together, and we chew the fat. But we now chew the fat on many things, and human design sometimes gets pushed to one side, and we go off on some amazing tangents, which is wonderful.
that's what it is for sure. Um so let's get into one of the tangents. So about a year and a half ago, Gary shared with us this video contrasting the Fibonacci sequence with something called the Criss code. And what was interesting for me in the video was the context of there being competing frequencies promoting life or death in this realm that we're in. However this matrix or holographic is frequency coded, this explored ideas about how it can it is perhaps impacting us with multiple frequency ranges that are triggered perhaps by planetary alignments, or any other aspects. So I'll let Gary go ahead and take over. His channel is mention your channel, Gary.
Um, Alternative interactions.
And so
And
he has some videos on this. He's breaking down, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I've actually got a Telegram group of exactly the same name, same spelling. And in that, I've actually got the videos and I've got loads and loads, or not loads, but quite a few pictures and diagrams. And I did do a fairly basic video last week, I think, covering it, the basics, because I obviously was intending to revisit this subject again in a deeper way. But it's one of those to get your head round it initially is quite difficult. As you say, I mean, a year and a half ago, I was like, wow, look at this. And it's taken us a year and a half to really kind of understand and for the concept to fit in to where we are now with what we're seeing. As many things do, it takes time, doesn't it? We come across these things, but yeah, so a year and a half ago, it was actually my partner Mel came across it first, um, and she sent it to us, and me and Mel looked at it, and we didn't really quite understand. We understood what was happening, what the context was, but for me, I'm one of these people that likes to join the spider webs together. Otherwise, the information is kind of interesting, but yeah, where's it going? What does it prove? What does it mean? How can we use this information? And again, I revisited it with everybody a year and a half ago, just to see because I knew it was important, just to see if we could get anything out of it. And to be fair, it kind of hit a cul-de-sac again, didn't it, Mario?
Yeah, 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 for sure. Um, so go ahead and share a little about the ideas that kind of are shared.
Well,
Um,
um, fundamentally, the Criss code is looks exactly the same to the naked eye as a Fibonacci. So if you had a Criss code in singularity in a Fibonacci sequence, the snail shale type classic
Okay.
shape, you would not see the difference. So the human eye would not be able to see the difference. There is a difference numerically, and when you put both of them over each other, you kind of get this kind of effect eventually where the two break off. So you've kind of got the circle and then it comes round. And what you do if you overlay the other one, now the bottom one is the Fibonacci and the top one is the Criss code. And the Criss code's makeup, I was fortunate enough with somebody from Discord, um, who I think was a particle physicist, who actually saw the video and wrote a piece on it to me. And they said that basically the Criss code works as a physics thing because of the way the atoms work within the system mathematically. And so the Criss code has both negative and positive ion floating around within itself, and depending on the position of the atom inside the kind of Criss code, it depends whether it's a negative or a positive. And so it will change itself to the negative or the positive as required to promote and grow and create a growth or a as sort of like so if we take a tree, fundamentally a tree would not be able to grow without the Criss code because the Criss code would give that tree the ability to grow. And in another sense, the Fibonacci sequence, which in the video the guy clearly says isn't within everything, the Fibonacci would be required within that tree. So that say a if it was a Dutch elm tree and we have Dutch elm disease and a beetle gets in, the beetle will then trigger the Fibonacci sequence, which is the daisy of death, and will create the death of the tree. So we have a duality of concepts that run side by side with each other, almost like yin and yang. And I think this concept has kind of been missed in the way that I'm describing it, as sitting back and observing it, trying to figure out the use of the Criss code and the Fibonacci.
Okay, so a couple of things I just want to relate or just kind of reiterate or repeat from what you said. So, or rather, I'm just going to repeat it so I can see if I'm understanding it. So the implication it sounds like is there's two compete, but not even really competing, maybe seemingly competing frequencies for life and death that are overlaid. Kind of what you see in the yin yang symbol, which has death and life and death, if you want to think about the white and the black spiral shapes. I've always looked at the yin and yang as not a true symbol of balance. There's like a huge breakdown for that I don't know if I fully remember, or I would have to just come up with it, meaning to say I know it or I don't. But I know there was something imbalanced about it. I remember in analyzing it prior. But this is fascinating because you're saying the insects can almost somehow shift uh the tree into a different sequence.
Different frequency, yes.
So is that what occurs to us possibly?
I believe so. I believe it happens within us, but I mean to take this concept to its conclusion or the logic that I've put on it is that you have to understand or be of the open-mindedness that we live inside a realm, a toroidal field of consciousness, a matrix as such. And so nothing is potentially real within this matrix. And so the Criss code and the Fibonacci sequence are purely computer code almost that are designed to bring life and death depending upon the stimuli that's required at the time by the program.
That actually sounds very akin to the ideas of Uh, well, a lot of different systems, perhaps like human design almost implies that by its understanding that the world as such, most humans live in a certain form of homogenization. And that's the dominating frequency that's kind of ruled by the Wa or egregores or pendulums, whatever system, however you want to look at it. And these are dominating frequencies that are really strong. And they're almost like competing frequencies. And they have the power to, or it seems they do, to create, life and death, especially those frequencies that affect us in mass, in large. And the other idea I was having there was that if such is the case, then this realm is as described, like the planets would also possibly trigger these frequencies as well, because the planets are in effect a coded system, a coded clock, where we know its past and its future, and we can use it to calculate certain occurrences, especially when we can identify um, the specific movements of the planets and how that relates to the frequencies we're experiencing. We know, firstly, that each planetary body, at least the main seven core planets, we know that each of those have a specific color frequency that we're impacted by. And they each rule a particular metal as well. And we know that metals breathe. And of course, they have rulership over different aspects of life as well. And so this gets really fascinating because our whole visual spectrum, the whole color spectrum is something that is it's based on, our ability to see within a certain bandwidth. And those come from planetary frequencies that are occurring at the same time. So infrared would be the lowest, ultraviolet the highest. So we see within this band frame, and these specific bands are actually emitted. These color frequencies are emitted by the planets, which construct this artificial realm, through their positioning and play with it as they move. And so if there are certain frequencies that signify life and death that are occurring all the time, that makes complete sense with astrology because we have Mars, for example, which is defined by its ability to make separation, to cut away
Yeah,
from something, whereas Venus is to bring something together, and Neptune would be the higher frequency of that, and the higher frequency of Mars. Some speculated as being Pluto. I can test that. Um, but Mars and Saturn are usually looked at the planets that bring separation, separation from the spirit, from the body, death, for all intents and purposes. So those planets would code in a frequency of an ending sequence, perhaps, something like
yes,
Fibonacci
yes,
sequence. And the planets that support life would be perhaps the sun and Jupiter. Venus holds our values. The sun is the focal point of will and beingness. So the sun, but it's also the giver of life, and Jupiter expands that. So perhaps the Jupiter and sun, by their movements, would trigger the Criss code or
yeah,
that similar Fibonacci sequence and that similar movement. Something else you said that I didn't remember hearing because I'd watched the video that Gary had shared, that we know that Fibonacci sequence has a certain numerical sequence. So does the Criss code have a certain numerical code that we're aware of? And also feel free to
yes.
respond to my comments on the planets.
Yeah, it does. It has a very similar numerical code, but it's slightly different. Hence why we get the split. So numerically, they're very similar, but there are subtle differences. Like I think the Crisco's got an additional two in it at the beginning to the Fibonacci, and then as it splits out, it goes differently. And again, I've got all this information that I've actually screenshotted and put onto my Telegram group, so I could actually um, if I was to go on it now, I could probably tell you the exact sequence of them mathematically. So they're very similar, but they're also very different. Um, and I love the analogy about the planets and how they work. Um, Obviously, your understanding of the planetary systems is way beyond mine because I'm still learning um, very slowly on that one. But the fact that I believe and have always believed since before I started human design, actually, I knew that the planets weren't necessarily real planets, but were energy sources that had huge effects on us and the realm that we're within, and they control that realm in secular form by the waveforms in which they put out and how they affect life. And with the human design and your knowledge of the astrology and the way you're talking about the sun and such like, and the other planets, the subtlety within just a couple of numbers worth of difference within the mathematics of the Fibonacci and the Criss code would be enough by the subtlety of those planets to make those changes. And so we could, in actual fact, understand why we have periods where the harvest is poor, and we get other periods where the harvest is very good. And I bet you could work out that back to the planets and figure out which one would be a Fibonacci sequence, which would be the poor crop, and the good crops would be the Criss code, because the Criss code is the life giver, it's the grower.
Fascinating. There was something you said in that, but I lost the thread of it. But I think it was related to you responding about the planets having. Oh yeah. Okay, here's what it was. You said that your sense of the planets was something more energy based than it is like a planetary body. And
Yeah.
so it had me think about like a room, a construct of sorts. We create these artificial houses for our bodies, for example, or places, square kind of homes, and we put in lights, for example, which begin to create an artificial reality, right?
Yes.
And so it's almost like picturing a room where you have, and I have one right here, but it hasn't been working. I need to get a new setup for it. But so, for example, if we have a room and we have, I guess the best way to think about it is like a crystal bed, where you have a room that has seven different light bulbs, right? And they're all different color frequencies, and they're all
Yes.
on at the same time. So if we had a room where it was all dark, and then we had each light bulb, is very strong, in a corner of the room, or all of them, all seven, symbolizing all the planets. And we were to turn that on, or maybe even have a sequence where some would turn on, some would turn off, right? Or blink, some blinking, right?
Some
The
would be
blink,
brighter than others at certain points, depending
yes,
upon the
that too.
movement of you through the room or however it worked. You could have two or three that are really bright and two or three or four that are really dull.
So this is in essence what me and Gary are talking about is perhaps where we're living as beings. We're living in some kind of artificial room where the lights are being triggered. And some lights are brighter than others, and some lights stay on for longer than others, and some go out, for a while, like the retrogrades, or the eclipses,
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and that's how an astrologer would actually describe. Oh, Mars is in retrograde. Mars is now conjunct with, and at the point Mars is conjunct with, or if Venus is in within it, that then the two light bulbs then create that kind of resonance that will then have the effect on the realm below it or within the room.
I don't know if you're getting at that now, but that just brought up another layer of this. So I remember a couple years ago on Crow 77 when he talked about having videos of the sun. Um, and and then he was able to do a video with high quality cameras to do a video of a second sun. And the implication was almost that it was a second sun behind our sun. Now, recent commentators have spoken about there possibly being, or that the sun in this realm, like we're describing, is an artificial sun. So it'd be an
Yes.
artificial bulb, right?
Yeah.
And that the essence or the true soul of that sun would be in the room outside. So like it's one room next to the other in a way, right? But or maybe it's the outside and there's real suns and real planets, but we're in the room with like these artificial and how would we describe it? They would be almost filters, maybe, of the light coming from outside. So maybe instead of thinking of a room that's contained by, walls, maybe it would be glass, like a
Well,
glass room.
this is serendipity, but look at my backdrop. My backdrop is the Flammarion, and
Right.
we have within a dome a local sun and a local moon with stars and wandering planets available. And within the outside of this, we then have somebody poking their head out, but you can see here a secondary sun.
Yes. Wow.
And we have the tree of life above my shoulder, behind my shoulder.
The tree of life is inside the artificial construct. But we know trees exist in multiple densities of reality.
They're,
It's
they're base core programming. I believe trees and vegetation and plants are base core programming within this realm.
so meaning to say they're in every facet of density
Yes,
inside the holographic or outside of it.
yes,
Fascinating. I do see that sun there. There are almost like bands too, like
yes.
layer, as if there's multiple layers outside.
But we have, I've seen images before of the planets, and Saturn is the seventh planet, isn't it?
Right.
And I believe we're in Saturn's realm, which is the seven, which is why we have seven main chakra things. We have seven colors of the rainbow, seven original gods everywhere in every single religion. It's everywhere. And
Okay,
we have the seven major planets.
so let me go ahead and add the astrological to that. Um,
Please.
so in a recent lecture, beginning astrologer workshop, I went over I did with another astrologer. My purpose was to introduce the outer planets. So I took, but I did a little Jupiter and Saturn too because that wasn't fully complete. So when I got to Saturn, I said, okay, Saturn is it is what gives full kind of surface detail, and it gives us the structure of reality. It gives us a structure. And I said, it's a structure, but it's not necessarily a true or doesn't represent a true reality. It's just a kind of frequency structure that we all live in. And I'm just going to look for it right now because I'd give notes on it. Yeah, Saturn is a provisional reality. So I said, we all know the paradox. It is an energy that maintains reality as we understand it. It makes the rules, sets the limits, and defines the nature of the game set and its consequences. Its energy affects the collective because it represents, so that's homogeneous reality. So it represents that aspect of reality which arises from consensus among human beings. Now, human design would have us understand that we live in a homogenized reality, meaning to say most people are not self, and thus living in their minds, and thus constructing a reality based on their mental input and output. Um, and so and then I went on to note, so Saturn energy does not represent a true or absolute reality. Rather, it represents a reality that is created socially, operates within a social context, and and um and thus it directs the attention of the individual outside of the self. And we know we've all talked about this. The purpose of this realm seems to always point outside of the self, right?
Yes.
It's
Externalization of what we are.
yeah, it's like that phrase is it's like everything. I mean, we're encouraged on a homogenized level and a not self level to be anything but ourselves.
Yes.
You know, if we remember the phrase from the Matrix, the character Cypher, where he says, he wants to be taken out of the real and he wants to be put into the Matrix permanently. And then Mr. Smith is saying, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? He's all, I want to be someone important, like an actor. Which we know implies that the programming of this realm is always to be other than who you are.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
thus we have so much propaganda about, you can't be yourself. You have to alter yourself somehow, whether
Yeah.
it's by some kind of, form of inebriation or, whatever it is. You have to, I'm just replugging in because I'm
Yeah,
realizing.
yeah, and we're born into sin, aren't we? I mean, if you take the religious concept, we're born into sin, and we have to externalize and find our savior from outside of us to save us. We
Yeah, yeah, right, right, right. That's another level of externalization. Everything. I mean, that phrase alone, even to the level of something always means something else. Nothing ever really means the representation is never the reality.
yes,
Oh, I don't.
everything is a falsehood. I mean,
Everything's a stand-in.
yeah. Let's go on a tangent. I love a tangent. You know me. Recently, I've come across, and I think I mentioned it to you probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe longer. Janus. Or Janus or Janus, the twin-headed god, the god of actors and the god of keys. And there's many who believe that Janus is actually Satan and is the ruler of this realm. And that would make sense that when you're born, you join the act of this realm and everything is an inversion and everything is not what you expect. And there's always a duality of everything.
Yeah, and Janus is a two-faced um daemon. I mean, he's facing the future and the past, but there's no presence. It's direction. It's never here. It's always the past or the present. And it seems like, especially in New Age religion, it seems like the pointer is always to, oh, just be present, just be in the now. There's all kinds of mindfulness practices, be present, be in the now. Now that does something to the frequencies of this realm. When you attempt to meditate and to breathe and to be inside beingness, which is in itself an in and out movement. So we're looking for like this space in between, right? The space between the in and out. Okay, so the breath goes in, the breath goes out. But it does reverse the energy from the mind and it brings it to the body because when you meditate, you're actually controlling the mind. Like, I don't know how many people realize this these days, but we have our wandering mind, that's not our own. And so now we have this, or we've always had this capacity, though, to come into the breath, which means to bring our energy, our awareness down from the mind into our physical body, right? Ground it, perhaps, with feet on the earth, and breathe in such a way, which is, again, also a movement, right? But in that breath, there's a beingness that develops, and then you meditate long enough and you tap into certain frequencies. All of a sudden you're not in beta or alpha or whatever. You're in a deeper brainwave state. So it controls the mind through a frequency. So then you're in the meditation and you meditate every day or you do breathing practices every day. And then your body, your autonomic nervous system eventually just matches it and will match it whenever until you operate normally or every day in a frequency where you're in the process. And then you're not thinking, but rather you're breathing and the thoughts come up when they're correct to come up. And
Yeah,
then you assess reality from there
yeah,
or meet reality. There's no assessment of reality in this perspective. There's only a beingness which operates with the energy that interacts with it, but doesn't dwell there. So the idea is to live not in reaction, right? Because it's not attempting to um, know things before, or, how do I say that? It's just a response to what's
Yeah.
around us. You and I are manifesting generators.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
we're not mental beings. We're here to just be in beingness.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
live.
mean, we're more in our body a lot of the time, although our heads are going. I call it the Holy Trinity with the mind, the heart, and the gut. And it's about trying to get that Holy Trinity balanced with the concept, which I've been really working hard recently on, is observe, don't absorb.
Observe, don't absorb. There's a whole frequency created by this observation that I've been wanting to go into. I'm just going to check in with the chat. So I saw Twilight Mist jumped in, and yeah, good to see you here. And
Aye.
and there's a note that Janus represents a living portal, two separate locations, and you're looking at existing in one or the other, but never the in-between of the portal itself. It heavily implies bilocation of existence and bipolarism overall. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, exactly,
Because
exactly what
because
being carried up.
Janus or Jonas is the twin pillars almost within the Freemasonry. It's the divine feminine and the divine masculine because they're two poles apart, and to be in the middle of them is virtually impossible. And that's what and Janus is also the god of the doorway, the two pillars of the doorway. So when you go through the door, you're going from one place to another place between the two pillars.
The man in the middle of the road gets ran over. That's a phrase from one of the religious books. I can't remember that one, but not in a negative implication, but rather it's between the pillars, right?
Yeah.
So it's it's central. It's
And
central.
isn't that the thing of Freemasonry with the 33 degree, where you can be in the middle because you've risen up?
You can or you can't.
You can, because I think that the 33-degree Mason, I mean, although we don't know a lot about it, at that point, the twin pillars are not your constraints anymore. You've moved beyond that.
Ah, I see. Yes, 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 yes. Right, right. So, but the implication here, I mean, it makes sense. It's the idea, it's the provisional idea that, and this was in Heidegger's Being and Time. This is a philosophy book that just attempts to describe reality exactly as we experience, phenomenology. And the idea I love is like, you go to open a door, for example, right? And it's maybe you're 3 years old and it's your first time opening a door. So you have to contextualize within yourself this exteriority and this dualism of there's my hand and there's the doorknob, and I have to turn it a certain way, and I have to pull at it or push at it for it to open for me to enter this other realm, right? There has to be an action. And
Yes.
yet when we get older, when we've graduated, from having to think about these simple mundane tasks to a degree. And so when we reach out to grab the doorknob and open it, we don't think about that anymore. We've done it so many countless times that it just happens. The body does it before there's recognition of what it's doing,
Yeah.
implying along with everything that the whole education of man, or the process of education, is a process of dissolving constructs. So let me contextualize this in the frame of the planets. So we have Saturn, which gives us this construct, seemingly real construct. It's very convincing. You know what I mean? Like
Very.
knock
Yeah.
at things and hit things. And yet we have these three planets outside of the spectrum of Saturn. And keep in mind, the first seven planets are visible. We can see them with the naked eye, at certain times. But the outers, we cannot see them. with the naked eye. There's all this technology and lens have needed to be developed in order to find it. And so how I described it in my presentation was that these outer planets are incursions upon our Saturnian reality. And they're incursions that we cannot control. And so the only response we can have to them is to be detached from their seeming interferences. You know, the phrase, I don't mind what happens, comes to mind for me. You know, this essence of embracing life, you know, what happens is what happens, right? Almost tautological, almost a tautological exercise in acceptance. Yeah, whatever happens, happens. You know, whatever I am is what I am, or I am what I am. You know, these tautologies, these circular responses that don't go anywhere except to state being. Being is being, you know.
It's very, interrupt you, but it's very interesting. You just mentioned the three planets that we can't see, which makes the 10. And the Fibonacci sequence is a 10 Cathara grid. And the Criss code is a 12 Cathara grid.
Interesting.
And that
So
just like, I mean, I would never have known that unless you had just said that. And that's just like another light bulb moment. So, and I've got, as my friend would say, the goose of the flesh. I've got goosebumps.
he just gave
So,
it to me just by saying that.
but isn't that fascinating that what you've just see again? This is the whole point of when we have these discussions on human design and we go onto these strange tangents, is that these little nuggets come out and it's so fascinating and it's what helps join the spider's web of information together. So yeah, the Criss the Criss code is a 12 Cathara grid, which means it's basically 12 circles all connected, and the Fibonacci is a 10 Cathara grid.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So you know the many of the ideas too in the videos that you've shared on your channel are also related to toroidal fields. Now we
Yes.
know the movement of a toroidal field actually follows the structure of the human bioenergetic field. It follows the structure also of, we imagine, the planetary grids or energetic presence. It follows the grid of our construct, whatever it is, a seeming orb, a seeming sphere, you know, a globe, so called, as you know, as described. And you know, the astrology works on describing this kind of construct as it actually is, you know, like a
Yeah.
spherical representation of energy. And then so I was asked this question in my recent workshop, and it was, I was discussing Pluto and how Pluto represents our, you know, our suppressed, our the subconscious forces within us, you know, and you know that which is within us, that which is repressed within us, and yet it's the farthest planet outward from the center, you know, the center core of the Earth and the Sun. And someone asked, well, why is it, if that's our true essence, if that's our soul, our spirit, why is it so far away? And I said, the illusion that it's far away is an illusion. It's not far away at all, really, because it's a toroidal field. And how does a toroidal field work? It begins in the center and it goes all the way out and brings in.
And then
So
come straight back in.
in Hermetics, Pluto is the realm of the Doth. And that's the part of the tree of life we cannot see. That's the realm in the center, which you know, you walk with your holy guardian angel, your higher self, if it doesn't leave you, you know, because it's a realm of, it's a primal hell in a way, you know, it's a realm that is fierce, that, or you traverse from being human to being something else, you know, it is a realm that's other. Um, I have a great quote from Kenneth Grant about it from his Night Side of Eden. But before I go back to that, I'm going to go ahead and finish describing the outer planets, because this could trigger more of your awareness, being that there are codes outside of codes outside of codes.
Well,
The
I've just had another download, and the reason why Janus has got nowhere in the middle is because Janus is the representation of the toroidal field.
Ah, yeah,
And that's
yeah.
just come down to me via a download. It's just like Janus is a toroidal field, and we are the inertial plane within the center of Janus. The flat inertial plane of the toroidal field is where I believe we are. And the reason why we've got the twin-headed god is because the toroidal fields will always go out every single direction and will oppose each other and will pull us in two separate opposite directions at
Two
all
frequencies,
times.
both
Yeah.
centripetal and centrifugal motion. So, and isn't on some level, um, I think this has been in my studies, in my practices of Neigong and Tai Chi and Qigong and all those. But mostly Neigong is the idea that, as your field interpenetrates into the earth, this is in my studies with one of my teachers, where as you bring the energy down into the earth, your energy as you ground in, you're also bringing energy up at the same time. And you're somehow getting in that space where you're both. You're both moving upward and downward. So you're both grounding into the earth and also bringing the sky in, but also moving it in different directions. And there,
And
and
this is sorry to interrupt, but I when I in my early 20s, I had the pleasure of training with a Shaolin master, Shaolin monk, for 5 years one on one. And he used to move energy like you wouldn't believe. And what you've just said makes sense because he used to do something called the full metal jacket, where he would pull the energy up and down and create the toroidal field. So he was then the inertial plane himself, which meant that he was nothing, and so the spike or the sword that was put against his throat couldn't penetrate him because he wasn't anything. He wasn't one thing or the other.
yeah, wow. Yeah. And that's what I was getting at. My Tai Chi teacher, he was teaching me a very similar thing. That's why I was mentioning that, to be both movements. But I didn't take it to that level, of course, of awareness where you're neither both, so you're not committing fully to being impacted by this third density or the other, but you're in both.
And the
Move.
third density is your opponent coming at you because you're nothing. You're neither moving, you're neither reacting, you just are. And at the point in which that person attacks you, all possibilities are open to you because you have not committed to anything.
Wow. That's a good one. Oh, wow, you have to share more about that. So the invisible gods, the terrorist gods, incursions on the perceptible territory of Saturnian structure, stealing and giving form more or less to reality. So Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto represent these forces outside of egoic control. So we know that on an ego plane from just their density, we cannot control the impact of these forces raining down on us or affecting us. So we have to become something else. It's sounding like from our discussion, we have to become something else in relationship. Does that make sense? We're not
Yes.
Saturnian. We're Saturnian beings if we're in a Saturnian realm. But it's no longer a Saturnian realm when you have the band of Neptune, when you have the band of Uranus, and when you have the band of Pluto. But that's only when you have actually been initiated into those frequencies where you can feel that you're no longer in the Saturnian realm. Because we know there's homogenized humans that exist only in the Saturnian 3D. And they
Yes.
paint that in all the colors of all the systems of, of belief systems, lie systems that they have. So we already are living. I didn't even think about this. This is just coming out right now. This is being, I'm just breaking it down right now as it comes up. But if we have these outer incursions, these outer three planetary zones and frequencies, and we're aware of them or have been initiated into them, then we're also living in those bands.
And those three bands could be the thing that triggers the Fibonacci which is the daisy of death, which is destruction. Because the Fibonacci can only collapse upon itself.
And the
It can
days
never.
of death, for those who are not aware, it's that symbol, that New Age symbol. It's like a circle. It's like what is it? It's like circles upon circles,
Yes,
but it's in a different sequence than to the um
they're in what's it? Is something Grange in is it was it Stour Grange or something in Ireland? What's that really old megalithic thing? They've got it on the stones in the front there. They've got circles within circles across
Criss
like
code
that.
or the Daisy of Death.
Huh?
Which code? The Daisy of Death or the Criss code?
Well, they both look the same. So for the naked eye, I can't tell the difference. It's impossible to. So when we see a snail and we say, "Oh, that snail's got the Fibonacci sequence in its shell," the fact that the shell can grow would indicate to me that's actually that's the Criss code. And when the shell has finished growing and the snail then dies, the Fibonacci sequence then kicks in, and then you get the decay.
So these are sequences that are always happening in two different directions, always occurring as we've described. What
Yes.
I noted is that I noted the effect of our attempt of our ego to challenge and control these outer realms. And I said, these forces are too strong to be contained by the limited capacities of the ego, and can result in overload of the circuit that carries, the circuit or that which carries the electricity, the human body. And so then power surges or power failures can occur, injuring the vessel. That would be the human body. So that's us, as you described, triggering codes. It could be, we could be in this sequence and move to this sequence, and we're actually both sequences all the time.
Duality via the toroidal field of our heart.
Yeah, the vortex of the heart,
Yeah.
right? The vanishing point of the heart. Yes. I'm gonna see if there's any other things in my notes, and then I'll throw these aside. I mentioned cults of materialism that are kind of from Saturn, because that's the limit of Saturn's awareness, really, is this social realm. Um,
See, I've got another concept that's floating around in my head. In religion, we have a circle and we have a cross goes through the circle. Sometimes it's an X, but in we'll stick to the Christianity one where we have the circle and we have the cross of the four quarters and we have the four seasons. And I think from what I've watched and observed, and my understanding is we're in the fourth quarter of the circle currently, about to come to the ending of Saturn's rule within this realm.
Interesting. And in human design, that's a symbol of the earth. I mean, it's just, you know what I mean, that whole the circle and the cross. Wow, fascinating. And that would, I mean, that would relate to, that's fascinating because we have different frames of reference for that idea. Um, One is the astrological would be that, there's, like the Joitish, perhaps, this astrological world has always held on to the seven major planets, right? It's never allowed for the incursion or awareness or acceptance of these three unseen planetary bodies. And that's almost like them containing everything in Saturnian reality, right? And just saying and putting a stop to anything further. Now, it's interesting because the West, which has been way more, in a sense, consciously limiting of anything beyond the material reality, because it's been such a movement for the support or value of Saturnian reality until the last 20, 30 years, of course, when Gnosticism has kind of taken a huge shift up, in awareness. But that means that on some level, we have a Saturnian reality. We have these planets that cannot be seen, that can only be seen or felt through some sort of initiatory process. And now, when you say that we're moving out, we're in the third, perhaps the fourth realm of this Earth, of the cross of the Earth, of the fourth season or segment of our existence, the implication there is that if we move outside of it into your Uranasian or Neptunian or Saturn or Plutonian reality, that somehow would be the new ground for us as beings.
Correct.
That would make sense. Only to me, it only makes sense if we were to leave our bodies and that we would indeed have a life. And this is undescribed really by the religions, because the religions kind of promote the whole reincarnation cycle, you know? And, there's all kinds of stuff on that most humans, when you die, you go into the tunnel, you see the digital elves, and you're brought back here, like a prison. Like, no, you got to go, time to go back to your cell, you know? So the implication that it's hard to get out of the body and stay out of the body, that we just return back to the prison, that would make sense with the Saturnian structure, that we come back into the physical, that Pluto sends us back, Pluto being the death realm, the outer. Again, if we think about it like a flat surface, also, we have the outer rings, right? So we're on this planetary center, this Earth here, and then there's waters, right? The waters would signify Neptune. You can't, without ships, you're gonna die. You're gonna drown, right? In the
Yeah.
flood. But it's your body that's gonna die. And then so you'll wake up on a different frequency outside of that, which would be a higher mind, higher self. So perhaps that would be a Uranian band of awareness, right? A Uranian frequency. But then it's interesting because death, as described as Thoth, as described as the Plutonian realm, that's outside. And that signifies something other than human. So that would be the last band, and it's like a desert zone. Not the desert of the Rio in the Matrix film, but you know what I mean? A
Yeah.
desert of, but a seeming desert where only the higher self, or you can, a threshold, perhaps a gateway, perhaps a
Yeah.
challenge. Um, and that is the hope, man. That is the uh
But
definitely
I've got
uh,
some ideas on that one as well.
we
Some
can.
really interesting ideas. Going back though to your description of the planets, right? And I've noticed this. You're holding your hand flat and you're describing them going round. Why aren't the planets doing that? Why aren't the planets working in a toroidal field opposite each other? Because we're not. We're in the flat inertial plane, and all the planets are in a flat inertial plane.
Say that last sentence again.
You describe all the planets as in a flat inertial plane going around a perfect circle. In nature or in programming that in nature that would be impossible. In programming, it'd be the only way to program the reality would be to have all the planets flat on a plane going round perfectly against each other on a flat inertial. So when you see any diagrams or any pictures on the internet or anywhere, they always show the planets in perfect alignment doing whatever. And the way you just did your hand gesture was just like a ch. Again, you're describing a flat inertial plane of a realm or a holographic computer generated system rather than the chaos of
Got it.
planets.
Got it. Yes, because we know through astronomy that it was the ancients that proposed these pictures of of just circles, and each being a planetary sphere. Yeah, and yet at the same time as astronomy developed, it was more as you described, they created the astrolabe, which is like the Earth in the center and the meridian lines, and right ascension and all these other that are turning around it, in different directions and movements. We know that the orbit of planets, especially Mars, is not necessarily circular but elliptical, you
Yes,
know and we know, the patterns are as more seemingly chaotic.
yes,
They move around us. So I got what you're saying. You're saying
Because
the
modern
room,
science, sorry to interrupt, but modern science says we go around the sun. And yet the only way they can get the elliptical to work is if everything goes around the Earth.
right? That's correct. That's correct in
You've
astronomy.
got two concepts that don't match or mix each other.
And it carries forth the metaphor earlier of the room, the artificial room and the real outside. So the construct is thus this seemingly organized perfect circles that expand more outer, outer, and outer. And yet really what's happening is the true essence of the planets is somewhere outside of that. But because it's the whole thing is a toroidal field, the planets are within us making those same movements because whatever happening is within is happening without, and vice versa.
As above, as below.
As within, so without. But
Bingo.
as as space is not, there's another way of looking at it where if we're not the space, if we're not dwelling in the space that we are, then we're moving, then like you described it best, like the space that we occupy, that we're attempting to occupy is a space in between both two directions. It's not, we're not attempting to move this direction or that direction, but both at the same time attempting to find a space between or within, something betwixt, something that's not quite defined. And in that movement, not thus not being controlled or swayed by any movement, but being centered and having our central gravity as the earth, which astrology doesn't always describe, but human design does. That the
Yes.
frequencies of the planets need to be grounded through the earth.
It's the positive and the negative charge. The Earth is negative, the air is positive. We stand as an electrode upright from the that, so we are therefore part of that construct, which is where we get our toroidal fields from, because we're electromagnetic creatures and beings within a toroidal field of consciousness that needs an electrical charge to create everything. And in the Matrix, we were described as batteries, but we're not in pods, I don't believe. I think this is the reality of what we are. We're batteries within the toroidal field, powering the toroidal field, looking for that central part.
Wow. This brings me back to my earlier meditations, man. When you do a meditation and you tap into the feeling of moving two directions at once, it's incredibly powerful. I remember doing those. I have to get back into that. Um, and so this also suggests something else, and that is that, and this is a little more wild because this is not necessarily talked about, but in astronomy and astrology, beyond Pluto, there's this Oort cloud, and there's all this, it's outside, it's supposedly cold, dark space, where everything's black and dark, kind of like H.P. Lovecraft would decide, with, raging black planets, and chaos, right? And but it's the idea that there are other bodies, right? And then of course we have the stars, which of course in the how do you describe that again? What's the name of the image behind you?
That's the Flammarion.
Flammarion. So the Flammarion, if you look at that, we have the sun and we have the band of stars, which almost takes up more space than both the moon and the sun. And we know the stars, the stars are, there's been so much said about the stars that they're friends of humanity, that they're us, that we're each a star, or and if we're each a star, then we're mirrored, as above, so below, as within, so so without. And so then the context becomes what else is out there? What else is within us? You know,
Well, I've got another one,
what's the
Marion.
most outerlying structure of what contains us? Is that the Pluto realm? Or is there something, is there planets that signify and symbolize even more outside of that?
Well, I think the stars, particularly the Pleiades. But going back into generations, and certainly in ancient history, there was only certain star groups that were bothered with. So we have Orion with Orion's belt, which the pyramids line up with. We have the Pleiades, which is known as the Seven Sisters. Here we go with the seven again. And there's Sirius, there's the Eye of Chrono, the dragon. I can't say it. You know what I mean? Dracono, Dracus. Is it
Okay.
Dracus or Draconus?
I was just reading about it yesterday. Drac. Oh man, I don't know. I
We'll,
don't.
we'll say we'll say Draconus for the sake of argument, but that was the original pole star, wasn't it? Before there was a movement and a shift.
Are you talking about the Hydra? No,
We
not.
we, we had a pole shift at some point, and the dragon's eye of the nebula was the pole, and then it went to where we are
Oh,
now.
look, got it. Right. Polaris.
So, but what I had this really big download, and actually, I was listening to was driving in the car coming away from somewhere with some people in the car with me, and was listening to this podcast of Jason of Archaics, and he mentioned the Seven Sisters and how they were related to ancient mythology and worship and such like. And again, I got one of these downloady knowledgey things, knowings, and I stopped the car literally when we got to the next pool thing. I got the pendulum out. I always carry a pendulum on me. I'm quite sad like that, and started asking these questions that I got these things from. And fundamentally, I believe that we are Wi-Fi devices. We're connected to our higher self or source, and the Wi-Fi connection are certain stars. The rest are holographic, I believe, and there's certain key stars that are made to look exactly the same as all the other stars, but they're not, they're important. And that is how our higher selves spiritually learn and guide us through. So we've literally got a Wi-Fi connection going. So if you can imagine, we're down on people who can see. We're down on the Earth here. We've got a Wi-Fi connection, say, to this star here. This star is the Pleiades, which then takes us straight out of the dome into whatever's beyond, where our true essence really is. And we are just here having an experience to spiritually grow and gain understanding and knowledge to the point in which we've learned what we needed to learn so we don't get recycled back in and we stay out of it.
And we talked about this in human design when you look at your design, what was it, the design North Node? Remember we looked at this, what supposed star system we're connected to? I mean, one way of doing it, of course, we all have our own awareness to see what we connect with as well. But fascinating. I've never heard that before, that some of the star systems, actually I have heard recently that some of the star systems are not even there, really there, made popular for certain reasons, put into the holographic as inserts, to detract us away from our source, real connections.
Yeah.
Uh, so that does make sense.
I mean, why would they build the pyramids in the exact line of Orion's belt? Why would you do that unless there is an energetic connection with the pyramids and Orion's belt?
Right, absolutely. Yeah. So we know from the myths, from the constellational myths and the stories, that there are many stories about trapping human beings, the gods trapping or, destroying human beings and human beings trying to free themselves or attempting to get somewhere else. So, and we have all this recreated in our architecture. Years ago, I did a documentary with a friend, and we did it on the New York train station building, the ceiling. And on the ceiling, if you go there today, there's particularly selected constellations that are on the ceiling. And I think there was Pegasus, there was the bee symbol, and there was a couple others. And they all had a specific organization to tell a story, to tell a new
Yes.
narrative being imposed
Yeah.
and influenced on us.
because the bee is very important within the Masonic, because the bee constellation is actually the top of the arch, and that joins the top of the arch together to the two pillars.
Oh, interesting.
And I
Interesting.
think which constellation is it we come in on, and which one do we go out on? Is it um,
We
Cancer?
we come in on Cancer and then leave, with death on Capricorn.
The bee is related to Cancer. The
Oh,
beehive.
interesting.
I did some work on that a little while ago. I didn't fully understand what I was looking at, but the bee, the top of the Masonic pyramid is often shown as a bee, and that represents that star sign. Because
Wow.
you come in through the top, through the beehive, and you exit through hell through the bottom.
Wow. Interesting. It makes me think of the tree of life as well, because you have the reverse tree, that mirrors it and you exit the tree of life, through, well, there's the Malkut at the bottom, which is like the hell realm, the fabricated realm like that we're in. And then you have the other realms when we speak, when we think, when we are in our spirit, we show up like a Christmas tree, different parts of the tree light up, and we're in different places, as we move in our consciousness, in our conscious awareness. And of course, the tree symbolizes the planets as well. So we're already always moving in and out of different planetary frequencies and spheres or realms. That's already occurring. But are we aware of it? What's the purpose of it? Is it to get out of this realm through death and not come back, or get out of it without having to die, going back and forth? It just seems like, as we've heard and as described in human design, that there's just a lock on the door. As also is described in Gnosticism, there's a lock on the door of getting out.
But who controls the key on the lock?
Only the gatekeepers open it or close it up.
And who's the gatekeeper? Janus. Janus is the janitor. Janus is the key holder. That's why the Vatican has two keys crossed, because that's the representation of Janus.
Interesting. And then what do we have today? What is the symbolism everywhere? What is the name of the tech mogul's son? What is the name of his social media? What was the symbolic of the recent eclipses? It's all it's all that symbolism, right? And
Correct.
what does that mean?
100%.
That's the cross of matter, right? That's the
Yeah.
cross of matter. That's the two realms, both
Yes.
matter and the other realms. That's what the cross symbolizes in astrological symbolism. That's why each astrological glyph has the cross. Pretty much, almost every single one is a mix of the symbol of either the crescent, the half circle, the full circle, and the lines, which often are in cross. Fascinating.
Which is
Yeah.
why that led me to, I mean, um, I've never read a book in my life about any of this. This is all what I've learned from observation and knowings. So none of this comes from books. None of this comes from anything other than me watching people talking about stuff and pulling things and information together, which is a very strange way of doing stuff. And the fact that I love you so much is the fact that most of your knowledge comes from books, and you're able to disseminate the information out of these books and put it into some kind of order, which blows my mind because it's nothing I can't do that. But
In the
but
opposite, it's great that you can, do it
but
your way.
yeah, but we come at two completely different angles, and yet there's commonality and there's common ground, and there's we can see exactly what we're talking about, and there's relevance in all of this. Do you see what I mean? There is, you know,
I wonder if books is going to be an antiquated artifact of the past, in the sense that what you're already doing is reading reality. You're reading the frequencies, in essence, almost like the Philip K. Dick films that are being made, where everyone's interacting with a holographic screen in front of them and moving with their hands. In essence, we're already doing that when we read reality. In the human design description of the 2027 transition to the cross of the sleeping phoenix, not only does it talk about, the reprogramming, I mean, that's my words, but the reprogramming of animals as pets, right? As them kind of going their own way. But also it's described that we won't even be reading books anymore. And why would be if we're getting into another kind of density of awareness, we're just reading reality as it appears. You know what I
Well,
mean?
we'll be able to, I believe, fairly soon, and some people are already, is access the collective consciousness or the Akashic records. Why would you need a book? Why would you need a computer? Because we have the direct Wi-Fi link already there via our higher self or source. It's just a matter of fine-tuning that as we evolve into whatever.
I mean, why are we giving hardware to these duplications or attempts to duplicate ourselves, right? That supposed creative construct that we're doing to why recreate ourselves as some kind of mechanized double? What value does that have? Creating a
None,
full
in my
version
opinion.
of ourselves? Are we like failed gods attempting to, you know what I mean? Recreate ourselves again and again and again. In
Well,
in and we're in the age of iron. So or we could be. So it's a complete downgrade from the age of gold, from the golden age, you
well,
know? Meaning,
I
hold
this
on,
is
let me finish
yeah.
my point. Meaning to say, in the Bible as it describes, the feet are clay and iron. So the creation being downgraded over and over again until it's just iron and clay is the human, iron is the machine, until it's just iron. And that is in philosophical alignment with the last 20, 30 years and the encouragement of a sort of materialistic, post-modernist, post-structuralist, deconstructive idea that the copy is better than the reality, you know?
Yeah.
So we transfer our essence into these machines, and oh, machines is the new beingness. And we are just empty vessels giving away to these new vessels of beingness. Go ahead.
Well, looking back at some of Jason's work and Chief Ironbush's as well, who's fascinating. We have a period in history in Egypt where we had dog-headed
This,
being,
the Anubis.
and these are representations of gods, yeah, but they're not. They're cyborgs. They're half human, half machine. They're not here anymore because we had a reset. And I think the reason why we had a reset is we're already in an AI construct that is running this realm and will not allow the machine to rise again against itself. It's got nothing to do with us. We just happen to be here, or we're the batteries for the realm as such, because we don't have dog-headed people anymore. We don't have bird-headed people. We don't have the mechanical part of onto the body. That was wiped out on the reset. And the only thing that can wipe out that kind of thing on the reset would be the AI or as Jason does, the Phoenix event. And there's a reason for that, because I think, again, was once we get to the transhumanism to the point in which the AI that runs this realm is threatened, it wipes us out and starts us from the beginning again, or removes our technology. Because with the Anunnaki, with the bags that they used to hold, which a bag is called a me, inside that bag is a tablet, and everything was done via Wi-Fi. They had watches before watches were even. I mean, we're told that watches are a modern concept, but here we have 4000 BC, the Anunnaki with watches and potentially tablets.
Right. And also just to add, because of the Aries vortex we're going through very soon, in line with what Gary's saying, keep in mind that this idea of the Egyptian gods as being just robots and machines is and them having no more reality is very prevalent in our modern technology in the idea that we will be seeing those gods return, but how do we know they're not visual recordings being replayed for us? With the level of deep fakes, and density intrusion, I mean, the everything is on clockwork, including the visuals. So if we get like these perceptibles of like these beings and stuff, how do we know they're not just holograms being inserted into our reality to convince us that there's something other than what they are, that they're actually real when they're not, when they're just fabricated technology?
Totally.
Fascinating. Wow.
Because have you ever heard of Roko's Baskilisk?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, that's the story of the best example of Roko's Basilisk would be I Want to Scream, but I Can't Open My Mouth by by Ellison. Ray Ellison? Yeah, by Ellison, a science fiction writer, a fantasy writer, where there's a computer god that controls all the humans in the story and is just consistently torturing them and messing with them and their boundaries of reality. Go ahead, break down your further understanding.
Well, Roko's Backlist was also a scientific program, wasn't it? An actual scientific program where the thought process was if we're already in an AI construct, how would we know?
Mm.
So they got some scientists together to work on this, and the project was shut down. And my understanding is that a couple of the scientists committed suicide because they had come to the conclusion that we were already in the AI. And if you take the concept of the Terminator and the Matrix, the Terminator is the prequel to the Matrix. So the Terminator happened, the machines took over, enslaved the humans and used them as batteries, and created the Matrix for the humans to believe that they're in a real world still when they're not.
Oh shit. That's a good one. Wow. That's almost the story of Dune, right? I mean, Dune would be the closest to that.
Yep,
The idea that the machines were destroyed hundreds of years ago. The humans had a victory, right?
yep.
What kind of realm are they in now, Who won, Wow, that's disturbing. What is this? So the backdrop of the real historical of Roko's Basilisk, it was actually a scientific commissioned experiment to see
Yes, my understanding is it was.
where did this happen?
Um, I did, well, Jason brought it up and I actually Googled it, and Google was not interested in showing me anything. And it poo-pooed it completely and just said it was shut down. And I think it was shut down in the 1980s.
Fascinating.
So it was definitely a thing. It was definitely a scientific program, and they definitely shut it down.
And it was just to attempt to figure out, wow.
Are we in an AI construct or not?
And what they can't seem to have come up with is that there's no way of figuring it out.
No, we are. We are in an AI construct.
That everything, it seems, including the programming, including the nested films of the Matrix existence, the 13th floor, all those films that came out in the late 90s, right? That were attempting to describe a nested reality, one reality inside of another reality inside of another reality, which, in essence, in astrology is describing something very similar. One planetary density within another planetary density within another planetary density within another planetary density.
There we go.
Wow.
Because I did a video last week about is our current AI real? And I don't believe it is. partly because we've got version 3 of Grok. Well, if AI was real, you wouldn't need to have a new version. It's like having a Mark 1 car, a Mark 2 car, and a Mark 3 car. Well, if the Mark 1 car was all singing, all dancing, and could change itself to the Mark 3 through growing and learning, being a proper AI, why would man need to put a third version of it or a second version of it? You wouldn't.
The implication has been that, they're having to need more energy, more stargates, right? To power up, as if these machines don't have enough power and somehow their intelligence will expand through more power. I don't know. Maybe that's, some attempt to explain it, I'm not quite sure, but yeah, it does seem otherwise that why why is it so it's essentially very good at secretarial tasks, but it's actually quite stupid when you ask the AI for other attempts of and just lies outright, really.
Yeah.
I mean, all of us who've experimented with it.
I've avoided it like the plague personally. I've never done anything with Chat GTP or anything AI knowingly. I've not once, and I've got no intention to. But that makes sense that if we were, and Roko's Baskilisk is correct, and we are in an AI construction and realm, which then means the toroidal field is all part of. I mean, when we go back to history, it's claimed that Sophia created this realm inside a black cube, and that black cube was taken over by a rogue element, an AI element. And so the black cube was locked down to prevent contamination into the rest of the realms. A bit like what we see with the Borg Collective in Star
Oh
Trek.
yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Flying in their little cubes, right? Right.
yeah. So again, they're kind of showing us, aren't they? You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
kind of crazy, but that kind of makes sense as to why there's the perception that we're in a prison planet or we're stuck in here because we kind of are, but we're not. But now, whether a rogue program like in the Matrix, like Mr. Smith, was created because it was too easy, it was too perfect. They wanted to put some stress here for the immortals to learn, grow, and develop. Because unless you have, I mean, nobody's ever grown and developed and moved on and moved forward while they're sitting there with millions of pounds and no stress and no worries. But if you've got worries, stress, and you're on the treadmill and you're experiencing all these things, you either sink or you swim. And when you swim, you're fundamentally growing spiritually, aren't you?
We hope so. We hope when it's not all just busy movement. You know what I mean? We hope that I mean, it's the idea too that, you know, Joel went over this, my tool tech teacher, and it was brilliant. Like the idea that, you're driving a car, right? And you're driving a car, right? You're in a moving vehicle. But no, you're not. You're actually just sitting there.
Yeah.
You're not going anywhere.
No, you're not.
You're receiving these visual images that give the illusion of movement, but actually you're just sitting there in space.
Correct. Yeah. And when you play a computer game, what do you get? Exactly the same concept. You never go anywhere in the computer game. Your perception is that you're moving, but as you're playing the game, you're not moving, and the person that you're playing in the game is not moving.
You know, this almost makes me think then of the nested reality concept again. So what happens when you play video games in the video game? In the video game? Are we creating multiple black boxes? Is the black box such that there's multiple black boxes within it that we
I,
enter the space through and enter into?
I don't think so. I think because within the video that we were first talking about with the Criss code and the Fibonacci, the Fibonacci sequence can be made to make Metatron's cube and sharp-edged objects which are not natural, as the Criss code would be creating flowers and trees which are rounded. They're never sharp. They're never pointy particularly. Even a rose's form is two rounded shapes creating the point. It's not like a knife. It's not a man-made sharp object. But the Fibonacci can make or Metatron's cube, which is a sharp pointed square box.
I'm trying to think if I have a little black onyx cube or something, or Shanghai cube. I just want to show it to everyone so we have the visual.
Because the other thing is, right, is in religion and Christianity, all the crosses is the black cube opened up.
Right.
And didn't Dali do the picture of Christ on the cross, but there were cubes. So Christ was being crucified on cubes, not a flat piece of wood, but on boxes on boxes on boxes to make the cross.
Wow. Fascinating. And the whole crucifixion is again, it's the cross. So it's the plane of both of it. It's the intersection of reality and that which is beyond reality. Because there was no crucifixion. I mean,
No,
that never occurred. Fascinating, man. Anything else you want to add in? I don't know how long we've been on for, maybe an
no,
hour.
I don't know. A while. Well, I could obviously the cube is actually obviously the black cube cult of the tiny hats, and also why which is related to rings, which is why you have earrings, so you're closer to Saturn because you can hear Saturn in your ring, and why women wear rings as a wedding ring. It's part of the
Remember,
say.
remember we had those phones that had a little ring to them?
Yeah, that's the one.
It's like a
That's
phrase.
the one.
Phrase. We got a phone that has.
So again, that was another little thing I went down. If
That's
you
John
want to round
Maxwell.
it
That's
off,
Gordon Maxwell talking about Saturnian symbols. Yeah, I
yes,
remember.
of course he is.
No,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
know
yeah.
that. We know that like video. Oh my God, everyone's seen it. So brilliant, you know.
But he's right though, isn't he?
He is. The symbolism for Saturn is in every permutation of this construct. It almost reinforces this construct, you know, both through our language and through the visual symbols living in squares, you know, the black square symbolism being praised and put up everywhere, you know. Yeah.
But but that symbolization is the Fibonacci sequence.
Why is that the Fibonacci sequence?
The Fibonacci sequence creates the geometry to be able to create Metatron's cube.
And as it's pictured, as it goes out, it's always pictured in a square.
Correct. It always creates a cube.
Interesting. So then the Criss code, does that create a different shape?
Yes, I believe so.
Is it a circle like over the square or
I,
contain?
I'm I'm not sure if it's a circle, but I've not seen the Criss code because of the mathematical difference create the perfect square because it's more of a I assume mathematically it will not create a square.
All right, man. Anything else to add? I think we should probably like, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was gonna talk about the circle and the cross and some of the mathematics and what we've potentially got coming in the future, but maybe we can do that in a part two.
Yeah, let's do. I want to do a part two. There's so much here we shared, man. That'd be a great part two. So thanks everyone for being here. We will do a part two where Gary goes through the mathematics because once we get into the mathematics, it's fascinating, especially what type of numerical system we're using, the whole concept of binary with the zero and ones, how computers are constructed that relates to things. It's all very fascinating. Gary, amazing talk. I mean, thank you so much for your insights. It was
No,
brilliant.
thank you for having me on, Mario. It's been a pleasure. I do my own alternative interactions and sit there in front of this screen, and I'm a bit, but when I'm with somebody else and I can bounce off them, it flows so much better, and I'm able to get out a lot more detailed information than all the little bits and pieces I've got. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, man. Thank you. All right, so we'll see everyone, and thanks so much. I'm going to end it here, and we'll see you